It's a Jackalope Carnival! Jackalope Carnival!
Hi, I'm Becca.
Hi, I'm Eric.
And you're listening to Season 2, Episode 12 of Jackalope Carnival, a sideshow of stories, a bi-weekly podcast where we explore the paranormal, the unusual, and the downright odd.
We got some downright odd stuff this week.
Today, we're going to be talking about UFO religions. So, hold on to your seat. Sometimes we hear about UFO religions as UFO cults. Cult's a word that's a little hard to define because in academia, it usually is used to talk about groups and movements in older, more established religions, but it can be used for newer religions too. Since at least the early 20th century, it's been used to talk about some new religious movements when we hear the word cult, but in general, it's just has a pejorative aspect to it. So we'll generally say religions, even though the religion I'm talking about thinks of themselves as a school, not a religion necessarily. New religious traditions, which I'm more comfortable with, is just any religion that sprouted up since the 1800s. So anything since the 19th century, for the most part, we can call a new religious movement. And I think that has a nicer ring to it. Some of these new religious movements are pretty well known and mainstream, like the Mormons or the Latter-day Saints, as they prefer to be called. And then others are a little more fringe, like movements that we're going to talk about today. But again, new religious movements is this huge umbrella term that just is talking about religions that have happened since the 1800s.
But we're going to go to the fringe of the fringe today.
A little bit, yeah. So while I'm not making a judgment necessarily on the beliefs, at least of my group.
Oh, I will for mine.
It does generally seem like when we talk about, beings in the heavens, that naming them as aliens is a lot more fringe than talking about them as gods or spirits. So yeah, you're definitely right. There's been a lot of academic work done on UFO religions. I really wish I would have gotten in that niche, to be honest. I'm a little jealous. Is there time? Y'all tell me, is there still time? I actually feel like when I was doing my research, there's just so much out there that I only got a little tiny piece. So kudos to the people that look into this and that have done this research for a long time, because I think that it's evolving and changing a lot faster than is very easy to keep up with. Now, when it comes to talking about UFO religions, there's this line of demarcation that's used by some academics, and that's talking about UFO religions as pre-Adamski and post-Adamski. Now, Eric and I have UFO religions from different eras. So his is going to be pre-Adamski, and mine's going to be post-Adamski. So you might be like, great, Becca.
Who is this
well, what the heck is
fella?
this? Yeah. Who is this? Why would this be? Why is it? And so, well, George Adamski was a Polish immigrant to the United States. He came when he was 2 years old, so he was a very young immigrant, all by himself on a boat. No, he came with his family. And he claims his first UFO sighting in 1946 or 1947, depending on which source you're using. This is going to coincide.
Year for
it was, yeah, you're absolutely correct. 47, and I think, to be fair, it might have been 47, but maybe the narrative changed to 46 to make it pre these two very famous UFO sightings that happened in 1947.
Because he saw it before anybody else. He's
the hipster. He's the UFO hipster.
Absolutely.
The first one is going to be 1947. This is the Kenneth Arnold sighting in Washington. And as Eric has informed me earlier, this is going to be where the flying saucer term is first coined, the term flying saucer that we use today. And then after his sighting, there was a much more famous that you may have heard of from television or just from your own UFO research, or maybe you live in New Mexico, the Roswell sighting. And these two sightings herald in a general shift in popularity and frequency of reported UFO sightings and reports of contact with UFOs.
Because Roswell, depending on who you believe or not, was the site of either some kind of crash of some kind of weather balloon or other technology, like human-made technology, or the place where like the U.S. government first got the aliens.
Yeah, and had like the alien autopsy, and they captured an alien survivor. I don't know. I've been to Roswell. I've been to the museum in Roswell. I bought some swag while I was at the museum. A water bottle. That's right. My own UFO water bottle from Roswell, New Mexico. It's pretty cool. That whole town has embraced that, and you can really have an enjoyable day there if you go visit. You can get like alien ice cream, that kind of stuff.
What is
it was a
alien
while
ice
ago.
cream?
You know, like I said, it was a while ago, so they probably have all different shops now. But
Gotcha.
Yeah, I'm guessing, however, that the businesses around that area are still celebrating it by naming sandwiches and ice cream flavors after UFO sighting.
Why not? I would buy it.
I don't know. If you guys go, let me know. I could just Google it, but I'd rather hear from you. So Adamski is an interesting demarcation because his sighting and his talks, all of his followers, I'm not going to say it was exactly a religion, but he did have followers. He did give lectures. It happens in a between era. So his era is really before we know very much about outer space as we're going to know. And we think about the 60s and we think about space exploration and landing on the moon, etc. And so he happens before this. And before him, religions that talk about UFOs don't really include the science. They tend to have more mythological ideas of extraterrestrials. And some of the earliest groups will talk about this through channeling. So you have like the Swedenborgians, Theosophists, Madame Blavatsky, a favorite of Eric's, yes.
Oh, I think we should do a show on her like at some point next season.
I think we probably will, yeah.
Yeah, that would be awesome. So that's like her movement is around the 1870s. And right, she tends to say that she's channeling ascended masters from like a spiritual plane. So for her, it's like a telepathic connection with people who may not be here on the planet Earth embodied or this plane of existence even.
Yeah, I mean, she never comes out and says, and, you know, she's the face of the movement. She's not the only founder, but she doesn't necessarily say aliens flat out, but a lot of people have implied that seems to be what it's
she's not saying
toward,
it's aliens, but
yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, and I think that I've heard that if some people want to go and revise history, like, okay, well, you know, somebody saw a blue man. That must have been an alien, but they just didn't have that language for it. So people would argue, well, she just wasn't using that language, but that's what it was.
But it was really Papa Smurf, and we all know that.
I'm not doing any of that. I'm just throwing it out there. It's a possibility. So who is this George Adamski? Well, he's a man who loved the stars, and I can relate to that. He lives in California at the time in the 1940s, Mount Palomar. And he spends his time studying the skies. I've heard he built a little observatory to watch the heavens. And as I mentioned before, in 46 or 47, he claims to have seen his first UFO. And he takes pictures. And he begins to go, remember, there's these other sightings. So there's now a thirst for this information. So he begins to give lectures and talks and show his photos and talk about his experiences. And he writes a little pamphlet, which gets some interest, and he ends up getting a co-writer and writing a book called Flying Saucers Have Landed in 1953, where he tells an incredible tale. And in this, he tells his story that he makes friends with and contact with tall, blonde, friendly Venusians. Is that our band name, Eric?
Yes. Friendly Venusians is a fine band name, but I just had this really funny image. Like he says he has pictures of him with the Venusians. What if he just keeps walking up to strange, like Swedish immigrants and being like, can I take your picture real quick? And they have no idea what this man's doing. Secretly, he keeps photographing himself with tourists.
He's going to all the Santa Lucia festivals.
Right. He's going to like Norwegian tourists and like taking pictures, like selfies with them. And, you know, know. Meanwhile, they don't know that like he's telling people that, oh, look, I'm talking to aliens.
Well, you might think that, but when I say Venusians, he's very specific. So we're not just talking about any blonde, friendly person. We're not talking about women. These are men. These are male. And he's going to know them. Eventually, this becomes a thing within UFO types, I guess. You know, you've probably heard of the Greys. Well, this is Nordic aliens. Now, if Nordic aliens sounds vaguely familiar to you, it may be because we mentioned them in our last podcast, almost as an aside. There's an author who channels a Nordic alien. Also want to mention that particular author, whose name escapes me at the moment, when you look up her author page, there's a picture of a gray alien, and that's under Lars Bergen is his name. And that's Lars Bergen. It's just a picture of a gray. Amazing. So the Nordic aliens are described in a way that gives Mothman a run for his money as far as paranormal hotties go. They are tall, they're blonde, they're described as handsome, friendly, intelligent, and telepathic. So basically the whole package.
But they're not thick.
And
not like Mothman.
They're not thick like Mothman, no, but I mean telepathic. Come on. I knew you were hungry. So he communicates with them through telepathy and sign language, which I can only imagine what kind of odd dances are going on there with like intense looks or something. I don't know. He comes and talks to them, smoldering, and he finds out that they've come to Earth to teach us a lesson of universal wisdom and peace. I bet they do a lot of space yoga. Do you think?
They can, and you can, maybe we'll come up with a Jackalope Carnival space yoga correspondence course. What are you saying?
Institute of Extraterrestrial Yoga and Smoothies, maybe?
Yeah.
Venusian smoothies.
I'll do the smoothies, you do the yoga.
Okay, well, so yeah, I like it. I actually love it. So the Venusians are going to take him on journeys throughout outer space. And they take him to Mars, they take him to Saturn, to the moon, and other planets. He contacts them, he calls them the Space Brothers, and takes this flight. Now, if you hear Space Brothers and the first thing you're thinking is 1970s Funkadelic super band Parliament, you're not alone, because that's what I think. And I had a really hard time doing any research about this where I didn't picture George Clinton coming down from the mothership to take me away.
Awesome.
Yeah, it would be awesome, actually. That's kind of my dream. Yeah. Actually, I'm going to do a playlist for this particular one. I'll send it out to you guys on our website eventually, which we'll be working on because I had many songs going through my head whilst researching this particular episode. So because Adamski was the first and most famous of the UFO contactees, during the 1950s, the 1940s, where we start getting this, he's that line of demarcation. But after, like I said, the space program comes to prominence, the moon that he's telling us that he goes to, well, we know a thing or two about the moon in the 1960s. And so he gets debunked. People are able to debunk him, but his theories, especially the word Space Brothers, other things, the Nordic aliens, those are still around, and those find their way into other UFO groups. Now, so the post-Adamskis, they tend to talk about planets unknown. So their aliens aren't going to come from Mars, Venus, that's so done. Venus is so 1954. But we're talking about strange planets that we've never heard of and explored. So Eric, tell us a little bit about your aliens.
My aliens come from before Adamski, not aliens, but my religious movement happens in the 1930s. So they predate Adamski by, some decades, or at least a decade. But they're still considered to be by some, and by some I mean Christopher Partridge, who teaches religion at University of Lancaster in Great Britain. And he writes in his work, UFO Religions, and I quote Professor Partridge here, Ballard are the people we're talking about, by the way. It's Guy and Edna Ballard, and they are the founders of the I Am movement. That's I, next word, AM.
I am that I am, not yes. I am what I am, like Popeye,
right.
Like the burning bush. I am that I am.
Yes. But that, and I'll take it in a new direction. But Christopher Partridge writes in his UFO Religions work, Ballard claimed not only to have met enigmatic 19th century alchemist, the Comte de Saint-Germain, on Mount Shasta in California, but also to have been subsequently introduced to 12 Venusians, there they are again, who revealed Venus to be home to a race of technologically and spiritually advanced beings. So this is people who say they have contacted people from another planet.
To be fair, he's not saying they're not tall, blonde, and Nordic.
He's not. Well, and well,
He probably is. Foreshadowing.
That is actually really good foreshadowing. Should we just get this out of the way?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we should just get this out of the way, so I have to mention it again. According to Mitch Horowitz in Occult America, let's just throw this down, okay, shall we? Guy and Edna Ballard owned a bookstore that included the works of Silver Shirt leader William Dudley Pelley, and they actively recruited members from the Silver Shirt movement. And
Who are the Silver Shirts?
You might ask. Unfortunately, the Silver Shirts were the much more fabulously dressed, but still incredibly problematic fascists. Yeah.
Fascists.
We're talking about space Nazis here. So there's that.
Well, the Silver Shirts weren't from space. Unfortunately, they are from Earth.
I think they're from New York.
America.
Yeah. But Nazis, screw those guys. But so there is some crossover between these kind of gross, ugly white supremacist movements and this early UFO religious movement. Now, I don't know if the modern movement is still connected to that or if they've disavowed it. I hope they disavowed it, but because they're still around. Do you know they still run a school in Northern California?
Oh, near Mount Shasta?
Near Mount Shasta, if you want to do that. But this story is going to get really strange, though. And you might be saying, like, wait, when you get really strange. Oh, we've talked about Venusians. We're talking about Mount Shasta. It's going to get strange because it's going to have an impact on the larger United States in two very important ways. First is in a way that is specific to the 1930s. So in the 1930s, as anybody who knows anything about world history, the U.S. and the world is going through some pretty big economic turmoil at the time. This is the Great Depression. But the Ballards are claiming that the Venusians will give them secrets and give them and their followers the secrets to financial success. That if you just send a self-addressed stamped envelope and a certain amount of money to the Ballards, they will send you the Venusian secrets and you too can get rich. Now, to be fair, their secrets...
Billionaires hate these secrets.
They do. They do indeed. But these secrets seem to have worked, Becca. I mean, at least for two people.
The Ballards?
Yes, because they will make $3 million on their mail scheme.
In the 30s.
In the 30s, which is $50 million today, in case you're wondering. Guy Ballard is going to die in the early 20th century, but Edna Ballard will live long enough to be convicted of mail fraud in the 1940s. Because people are like, well, she's raking in money off of peddling, a bunch of nonsense about Venusians and so forth and so on. And believe it or not, this case goes all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And it's going to have an impact on the rest of the country because the majority opinion is going to find in favor of the Ballards and the I Am movement. Now, the justice who writes the majority opinion, who is William O. Douglas, will write, quote, "The religious views espoused by respondents might seem incredible, if not preposterous to most people. But if those doctrines are subject to trial before a jury charged with finding their truth or falsity, then the same can be done with the religious beliefs of any sect. When the triers of fact undertake that task, they enter a forbidden domain. The First Amendment does not select any one group or any one type of religion for preferred treatment. It puts them all in that position." And I have to say, honestly, that even though, I have plenty of thoughts about the I Am movement, that's not my religion in any way, shape, or form. That being said, I have to say that I think that Justice Douglas got this right. That I think that the precedent set by this case, where it's not really up to the courts to decide whether or not your religious movement's claims are true or false, even if they're coming from Venusians from Mount Shasta who are telling you to send a self-addressed stamped envelope, to the
And
people.
even if Guy Ballard says that he was George Washington in his past life.
Actual fact that he stated. Now, I'm not saying he was. I'm just saying he said that.
Great American religious figure, George Washington.
Yep, that's right. And they will borrow the phrase Great White Brotherhood, but I think they use it
From Blavatsky, yeah.
Yeah, but they say it in I think their usage of it is more problematic. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Hey, let's finish talking about them. Tell me about your religious movement, Becca.
So oddly enough, my religious movement is something that I hadn't really heard much about before. And I have heard about a lot of new religious movements. So usually, the Raelians, Universe People, Heaven's Gate. But somehow I really missed the Unarians, or Unarians, also the Universal Articulate Interdimensional Understanding of Science. So Unarians short from that. Anyway, I'm like, that's not exactly, but the reason I chose them had everything to do with my love for the 1970s. I'm not going to lie about this. And the videos I watched on their YouTube channel. Gold LeMay is alive and well in the Unarius Academy of Science in El Cajon, California. And I'm totally here for that. So did I pick them for the fashion and the Gold LeMay?
Yes. Yes, you did.
Am I ashamed of it?
No. Not even the slightest. No.
Not at all. And I mean, really, that sets them apart. You're like, what? We'll get there. So before I get into the glittery world of LeMay and Mylar, let's talk about the history of this group. So this is actually founded by a husband and wife duo in California as well, in little after. So again, remember, I'm talking about post-Adamski in 1954 in California by Ernest and Ruth Norman. And they found the Unarius Academy of Science. Like I said, they think of themselves more as a school or an academy and less of a religion. But I bet when it comes tax time, they think of themselves as a religion. Okay. So for those of you who aren't American and listening, that religious groups are exempt from taxes here. So fair or not. So Ernest has a background in sciences.
But they're not exempt from fashion rules.
Oh, I think these people are exempt. Let me tell you, they've pushed the envelope many a time. So Ernest is an interesting fellow. He has a background in the sciences. He's self-taught, though. So they said that he was a prodigy, but that also that some of his mastery of subjects in science was because he was channeling people. Channeling comes naturally and early to him because he was a member of the Spiritualist Church. So you may remember if you've gone back in the Jackalope Carnival archives, and I know many of you have been with us through it all. And we also just want to take this time to say thank you. We love you.
Thank you.
But for those of you who might have not been here with us, new listeners, we love you too. The Spiritualist group started in the mid 1800s, and it was a loosely, I say group because it does become the Spiritualist Church, but basically the main thing is channeling and mediumship. So you have mediums that will channel knowledge from other beings. So he'd done this, and through the Spiritualist group, maybe the sort of Blavatsky way of channeling beings from different dimensions. But what makes him and his wife different is they start to channel space brothers. So they start to channel aliens. And it's said that he meets his wife. Oh, he also thinks he's the reincarnation, not of George Washington, but also of Jesus, which is really odd because I think in most religions, if someone says they're the reincarnation of Jesus, it's like the big deal center of the religion. Not that big of a deal for these guys. Oh yeah, when I was Jesus, but moving on. So I think that's kind of interesting as well. So he meets his wife at a spiritualist convention in 1954. So I think would probably be pretty interesting seeing sort of a alt-religious group in 1954. But Lore tells us...
I got a great idea for my dating life, though. So next year...
Spiritualist convention. Well, Eric, I hope you're ready to commit because Ruth and Ernest met each other and married that same day, according to lore of their followers.
Okay, and second thought.
I hope you're in for the long haul.
Right. I think I might need a little bit longer courtship. So thanks for the warning. I appreciate that.
So this was a pretty big deal. They marry in 1954 and they start their religion group, their school, in 1954. So during this convention, they say in a book later, they say that a psychic tells them, a medium tells them that there's these 3 white bearded men following them holding books. Now, from the wording here, I don't know if they mean white beards or white men or white men with beards, but with this Nordic stuff, they probably mean white men with white beards. So
awkward.
Yeah, it was claimed here that the books, the spirit men were carrying were books that Ernest would write in the future. And lo and behold, he does. He does write 3 books. And he does this through channeling.
Whoa.
So,
Becca.
Again.
Whoa. This is just like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Just like it.
Just like it.
So again, he does channel a lot. This isn't something that suddenly new. He was within the spiritualist tradition, so he's used to this. But he channels these books. And at some point, him and Ruth, they start to lecture. So they go on the lecture circuit and talk about the wisdom that they're being channeled from these space brothers. Unarius is basically this brotherhood. So Unarius is a brotherhood, but they also don't just channel space spirits. They also channel humans because Nikola Tesla plays an important part in Unarian philosophy.
Of course he does.
And he's not the only human, and it sets this apart. So they channel aliens and humans. It's not really that enlightened beings only come from one place.
They're casting a wide net.
Over the 50s and 60s, they continue channeling and giving lectures, and they develop this following. Prominent scholar on UFO religions, you raised me a partridge, I'll raise you a Benjamin Zeller. He tells us a little bit about the beliefs of this group. And he says, members of the Unarius Academy of Science believe that these ETs, identified as the Space Brothers, offered spiritual teachings intended to guarantee humans a fortunate rebirth on distant utopian planets, including Venus, Eros, Hermes, Orion, Muse, Elysium, the Pleiades, and Unarius, the headquarters of an interplanetary confederacy and source of the group's name. So again, they believe that, and I'm breaking, it's me now. It should be said that they believe in this interplanetary confederation of 33 planets. And in this interplanetary confederation, Earth is the low frequency planet. So like we bring down the vibe. We need to raise our vibe and they're helping us, but we're like the low vibe. And how do I know this? Well, Eric, let me finish what Zeller says and then I'll tell you. Zeller says, Unarius identified an atomic age as one fraught with change. But unlike the apocalyptic warnings of other groups, Unarius looked to the new atomic science as a source of knowledge and potential. Following the physical arrival of the Space Brothers on board their UFOs, the ETs would enable a new golden age of science, spirituality, technology, and tranquility. They would cure all diseases, social ills, and psychic wrongs, and teach humanity the cosmic truths that would allow Earthlings to join the planetary confederacy of Unarius. The Space Brothers would utilize spiritual technology, such as psychic anatomy viewer, to enact such changes. The Normans did not say how this viewer operated, but did specify the Space Brothers used technology rather than magical or supernatural means to enact the new golden age. Okay.
They're really committed to this Space Brother phrase too. Like they like to really.
I'm committed to the Space Brothers phase. And I would have said that is our band name, but it's already an anime and a band name. So it's taken.
Fair enough.
So Space Brothers. And I mean, the whole personality of it is basically Parliament.
Yeah.
So the Normans, they believe that Unarius, again, this brotherhood, Space Brothers, they're going to come and see us. But that's a little bit of contention because from what I understand, they were supposed to come in 2001. Ruth proclaims this in 1974. Ernest Norman dies in 1971 and she becomes the head of the group and she makes this prediction and then they don't come after they had bought land for them as a landing site. So the group, some of them have left this behind. Some of them have come and said, no, this is going to happen in another future date. We're not 100% sure.
Look, we
I
went
should
out
say,
and we bought this land and we were waiting for you. We set
we
up
probably just messed up and didn't
invitations.
brought down the vibe again. It's probably our fault.
Fair enough.
So at some point, and so a few things that were really exciting to me. One, as I was researching, I found that for a long time, the Unarians had a public access channel. So you can watch loads and loads of amazing glitter, gold lame, sparkles, and all the bling that you want on Ruth Norman, who at some point, and I'm not 100% sure when this happens, but she takes on the personality of Uriel. In some book that it's described as one of her other Unarians, it has a vision. And in this vision, he sees her sitting in a golden throne surrounded by thousands of people, and that she is this great Uriel. She's an archangel and she's queen of the heavens.
I know who
And
this
so-
is. Oh my gosh. Now that I didn't
Yeah.
realize that you're talking about Uriel, I know who this is.
Yeah,
I've watched her
Uriel's
videos.
amazing.
Yeah.
Uriel's amazing. The channel's amazing. And she dresses like the love child of Liberace and every drag queen ever. I mean, the fabulousness. Endora, maybe Liberace and Endora from Bewitched, if you've ever watched those Nick at Night reruns.
Or she kind of looks like one of the bad guys from the Power Rangers.
Or maybe like a more blinged out fairy godmother. I'm not sure, but she's amazing. And the thing that I noticed is that a lot of her followers dress the same. Now, there is, again, some contention, like you guys are making us look bad, but it seems like a lot of them really enjoy glitter eyeshadow and gold lame.
They got
and
a
lot
real
of fabric dresses.
Sid and Marty Croft thing going on here. I'm just saying.
So one of my favorite things that I was able to watch was a 1993 interview with the Unarians by a man who was the lead singer of many punk bands, but one in particular called the Dead Kennedys, because it was an interview that was an hour and 20 minutes of the
Jello
Unarians
Biafra
by
got
Jello
involved?
Biafra. Yeah.
This
And
is what you were talking about earlier. Oh
it
my
was
God.
amazing.
You
It
were
was
like-
amazing.
You were like, you're not going to believe what I found. And you're right. I don't believe
Yeah.
what you found. This is amazing.
Well, and at one point, Jello's like wearing this like silky bright turban and like, dressing with them. But what he does is he takes them seriously. That he not only takes them seriously, but he questions like some of their beliefs in a way of like, well, yeah, he at one point, and I love this, and he's so earnest about it. And to be fair, so are the Unarians that they're interviewing. And I'm going to paraphrase. But at one point, they're talking to him about they're going to use the Tesla coils to give free power to everybody because it seems like they have this very utopian view that the Space Brothers are going to come and help us out. And he's like, well, if they can do this, like, and they can give us all these things and they're here, why do you think what do they think of wealth hoarding? Well, people are starving and there's war. Like, why aren't they helping us now? And the Unarian he's talking to is like, well, people have to progress in their evolution. And basically, if you watch Star Trek Prime Directive, he's like, they won't interfere in our prerogative to learn. And Joe's like, well, the people who were blown to bits in wars didn't have a chance to learn that. And I love that he's not like, okay, whack job. He's completely taking her seriously, but he also challenges her on some of those ideas. And I think that was a really fascinating interview. If you get a chance to watch it, look up Jello Biafra and Unarians. I'm pretty sure Eric's going to be watching it.
I'm watching it right now.
Eric's like, bye, Becca.
I got it on like subtitles.
He can't wait.
So wonderful.
Yeah, it's really honestly worth it just to see Jello Biafra in a silky turban. But there's some interesting things. They've gone through some changes. They're still around. I find it really interesting that a group this small has had some different, they've branched off already. And, generally that kind of happens when people die within religious groups. So yeah, Ruth leaves the planet in her 90s. And is she still communicating through her bling? Because that's what the woman tells Jello Biafra. Like, she's projected to us through the sparkles of her earrings that I'm wearing.
Is
Yeah,
that like
I don't
literal?
know.
Is that a literal quote? Please tell me.
I mean, it's a literal paraphrase. Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
That's wonderful.
So, yeah, that is my story. There's more to come. There's more on Uriel. You can look that up. I will eventually make a playlist for this because it will include Jello Biafra. If you don't know who the dead Kennedys are, give them a listen. All right. Well, guys, I hope this gives you some food for thought.
We really went all over the place. I just can I just plot out the plot points of today's episode because I can
Yes,
kind of
please.
not believe it myself. Okay.
In summation,
right? We talked about Nordic aliens, Roswell. We talked about Mount Shasta, and then we talked about Venusians. Then that went to the Supreme Court.
Mm-hmm.
From there, we went back to Venus again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, back to Venus, then to Jello Biafra, then to the Archangel Uriel, then finally to 70s Gold LeMay Sid Marty Krofft fashions.
Yeah, it was sweet. It was delicious. It's given me many things to think about, and y'all can bet I'm going to be walking around in something sparkly tomorrow.
Man, there is a Jackalope Carnival vibe, and it is running through this episode.
I hope you all wear something sparkly too. Wado.
Take care, folks.
Jackalope Carnival!